It's time for cookies and crime. I've made another set of zodiac cookies, and the first one up is Capricorn. This is the case of Ahmed Siraji. Siraji was born January 10, 1949 in North Sumatra, Indonesia. He worked as a cattle breeder and as a shaman who claimed he possessed supernatural powers. His clientele were often women seeking his guidance on how to find good fortune or maintain their beauty. He could also cast a spell on their spouses to keep them from having an affair. On April 24, 1997, a 20-year-old woman asked a 15-year-old rickshaw puller to take her to him. She told the rickshaw puller to keep it a secret, and although she needed a ride there, she didn't need to be picked up. 3 days later, her body was found in a sugarcane field by a man and was later dug up by a group of people. The police were informed, and the rickshaw puller reported to the police and the woman's family that he had dropped her off at Siraji's house 3 days earlier. So, the police went to investigate him. Although he first denied having anything to do with her death, police found her handbag, dress, and bracelet in his house. He was arrested. During interrogation, Siraji eventually confessed to her murder, but also revealed that he had killed up to 42 girls in the same fashion, and an excavation had to be carried out in the sugarcane field. They in fact found 42 bodies, and some were decomposing to the point that they were unidentifiable. And the reason behind the murders, you will never guess. He told police that he had a dream in 1986 in which his father's ghost directed him to drink the saliva of 70 dead young women so that he could become a mystic healer. Siraji thought that it would take him too long to encounter 70 women who died of natural causes, so in order to speed up the process, he decided to kill them. As a shaman, he already had a good amount of women visiting him. He would then take them into a nearby sugarcane field and bury them up to their waist, telling them it was part of the ritual. He would then murder them and drink their saliva. He would then bury them completely with their heads pointing towards his house. He told police, "My father did not specifically advise me to kill people, so I was thinking, it would take ages if I have to wait to get 70 women. I was trying to get to it as fast as possible, and I took my own initiative to kill." His trial began on December 11, 1997, with a 363-page charge against him. He maintained his innocence. His 3 wives, all sisters, were also arrested for assisting in the murders and helping to hide the bodies. They claimed they confessed under torture by the police. He was found guilty and he was sentenced to death by firing squad. He died July 10, 2008. It's time for cookies and crime listener stories. This is The Boy sent in by Anonymous. Anonymous says, "This one is less paranormal and just a really sad story, but here we go." By the way, if you want to send in a story, it could be paranormal or true crime. Or straight up just weird, who knows what I'll read. This happened when I was about 13. We had these 2 kids at my school, and they were brothers. I was in the 7th grade, one was in 8th grade, and the other was in the 3rd grade, the same as my little brother. My brother was really good friends with this boy. We'll call him Zayden. I didn't really know his brother, Robert, but he was decently popular. One weekend, Zayden was killed. He was around 8. Zayden's siblings said that he was outside and a bullet came from the woods. The police came to the conclusion that someone was hunting where they shouldn't have been, and a stray bullet was sent into the little boy's head. My brother was heartbroken and cried the entire weekend. I couldn't imagine how his little 9-year-old brain would comprehend this. It's a few days later, a Tuesday specifically, and our entire school is put on lockdown and all of the 8th graders get called into the cafeteria and are questioned. Next thing we know, all the 8th graders are crying. No one would tell me anything, so I just went home. That night, my parents had explained to me and my older brother that Zayden's older brother Robert shot him. He had apparently told 4 different police 4 different stories and had a pistol and ammo hidden in the back of his closet. A 14-year-old murdered his 8-year-old brother. It still baffles me to this day how someone could do that. It's time for cookies and crime. This is the murder of Stephen Roberts. Dorothy Marie Roberts, better known as Marie Roberts, loved her mother deeply. With the 2 being so close, they were more like sisters than mother and daughter. The 16-year-old had lived primarily with her mom following her parents' divorce when she was 4. However, their relationship had become strained prior to the start of Marie's junior year of high school, when the teenager came home and discovered her stepfather, Frank Burrows, with another woman. Despite the revelation, Marie's mother, Beth, decided to work on her marriage, causing a mother-daughter rift. Marie hated Frank and was outright disobedient towards him, culminating in Marie threatening to leave the home if Beth and Frank didn't get a divorce. Beth and Frank stayed together, and as a result, Marie went to live full-time with her father, Stephen. Marie immediately regretted her decision and turned up on her mother and stepfather's doorstep begging to move back in. On the other hand, Stephen Robards, her father, was apparently thrilled to have his daughter with him full-time and was working hard to learn the necessary homemaking skills to raise a teenager. It wasn't that Marie had a bad relationship with her father, she just missed her mother terribly. Unfortunately for Marie, Frank had made it clear that if she moved out, she wouldn't be able to move back in, and Beth and Frank stuck to the rule, forcing Marie to go back to her father's home. And that was when Marie decided to take things into her own hands. Using barium acetate that she had stolen from her high school chemistry class, Marie laced her father's refried beans on taco night with what would amount to a lethal dose. Later, she would claim she only wanted to make her father sick so she could go back to living with her mother. Whatever the initial motivation, the results were the same. Stephen Robards died, and his death was initially ruled as a heart attack. Marie got her wish and returned to her mother's house. In a horrible turn of events, Marie learned at her father's funeral that Beth was leaving Frank and had already made a plan to move with her daughter to Florida. Almost a year later, Marie was studying Hamlet one night with one of her best friends when the subject matter caused her to confess her crime. Her friend, Stacy High, agonized for weeks over what to do with this information before finally asking a school counselor to contact the police about the murder. When the crime was reinvestigated, the poisoning was discovered. Marie, who by this time was a freshman at the University of Texas, was convicted of her father's 1993 murder in 1995. She was sentenced to 27 years in prison. She was paroled in 2003 and is now believed to be living under a new identity. Would you turn in your best friend if she admitted to a murder? I know we're all thinking the same thing. Of course not. Just kidding, I would sing like a canary. This is Spooky Cookies. If you're like me, you've heard the name Krampus, but you don't know exactly who he is or what he does. I know he's meant to scare children, but what he actually does should scare anybody. Krampus is covered in coarse fur and is half goat, half demon. He is said to have pointed devilish horns and a long snake-like tongue. He could also be seen wearing chains and bells, and he carries a large sack to bring evil children back with him. You can tell he's coming when you hear the clip-clop of his cloven hoofs. He'll also be armed with some birch branches to beat the naughty children, but if they're really bad, he might eat them or drag them to hell. He typically comes on the evening of December 5th, a night called Krampusnacht. Accompanying Krampus is Santa, who's giving treats to good children, like oranges and walnuts. This was way back in the day, I don't know if they still do that now. While Krampus is scaring the life out of little kids. Most people believe that Krampus was created originally in the Alpine region during their pagan past. Krampus is still celebrated in their tradition and also in Austria. All in all, the story of Krampus is used to make your children behave. It's basically like Santa giving you a coal if you're a naughty kid, but on demonic steroids. It's time for Cookies and Crime listener stories. This is The Closet Ghost sent in by Kai. Kai says, I live in a house that was built in 1960 or earlier. So lots of people have lived here and one of them is haunting the closet upstairs that's in the front of the stairs. Every time I go upstairs, I see the closet ghost. She appears to be mid-30s.